Let me make sure my sound is on. Welcome, folks. This is the United Parent Council presentation with Dr. Dan Peters. He's going to be talking about preparing your gifted child for a successful life. You are here at the United Parent Council's, hopefully you're on our Facebook page or joining us in our Zoom presentation. Thank you, Dr. Peters. I'll let you go ahead and share your screen and share your presentation with us.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Dina, for having me here this evening. Thank you all for your patience as we get this up and running. Tonight, we're focusing on what matters, right? Preparing our kids, our gifted kids for life. And in doing so, we need to set the context here of the kind of year and past year it's been. My last travel for speaking was to speak to your students, speak to many of you parents, and come to your district. And it was just as things were starting to shut down, and a little more didn't get the last flight out, but I was glad I was able to come to you and travel, because that has not happened since. So of course, unprecedented times, right? We are living through a pandemic. We have had the election of all elections and the political climate of all political climates leading up to it. Virtual learning, a new situation for students, for teachers, for parents. Then, as we needed a little more stress, an attack on the Capitol. And I mention all these because not only are these monumental events for all of us, but when we think about our gifted children and their advanced thinking and their depth and their sensitivity, these are all very significant. We have all the uncertainty that went with all of that. And then we have all the usual things to be worried and anxious about. So I don't need to tell you, but I just want to validate what a year it's been. So we're going to start with this quiz. So which best describes you as a parent? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you worry about your child now? Or do you worry about your child in the future? Or all of the above, right? So parenting is not easy. Parenting in a pandemic is not easy. And parenting a bright, intense, sensitive, asynchronous, gifted child is not easy. So I empathize with you. And today is about us joining together and talking about some important ideas for raising these humans. So we'll start with the science, parenting science. What we know is that teaching our kids is better than controlling and punishing them. We also know from brain-based parenting science that kids don't learn when they're scared or angry. When their emotional brain is firing, if we're standing over them upset, if we're yelling at them, all of these very typical parenting things. So this is no judgment. No, all of us were parented at some point too. A lot of these traditional parenting approaches are not optimal for teaching. We talk about disciplining, and along the way in our culture, disciplining turned into punishment, when discipline actually means to teach, and a disciple is a student. So not only can kids not learn when they are emotionally upset, angry, or scared, we parents can't parent or teach effectively when we are not regulated. When we're upset, we cannot have that positive impact on them. Critical is that kids learn from watching what we do. They're always watching our behavior. And then finally, what the science says over and over again is that love and connection with our kids is foundational to their health and well-being. So in my years as a psychologist, as a parent, both which have given me now gray hair, which of course, hopefully is for wisdom, is that parents want what's best for their kids. They don't want their kids to suffer in general. They don't want their kids to experience any of the pain they did. And they want their kids to be happy and successful. These are these common terms. When you think about what do you want for kids? Well, I want my kid to be happy and a successful person, successful in life. And here's what's interesting about all of this is if we can name several situations where parents wanted what was best for their kids. They wanted their kids to be happy and successful, and they wanted their kids not to suffer. I'll pick one, the college admissions scandal. These parents wanted what was best, and they acted in ways based on that intention, which turned out to be not only illegal, but not in their kids' best interest, with many of their kids upset, felt distrustful, felt their parents didn't believe in them. Many of these kids had worked very hard to get into college. And then all of a sudden, all of this was happening and they were getting an extra illegal edge, which was giving them the message that they can't do it on their own. So what we know is that parents' childhoods always inform what they believe about parenting. Our childhood always informs our parenting beliefs, and our childhood as parents always impacts our behavior. So it informs our beliefs, which inform our parenting behavior. An aspirational quote: treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. So when we think about the messages we're giving to our kids, are we helping them to play up, or are we keeping them in their box, or are we actually undermining their ability? Tonight, you're going to hear me talk a lot about awareness and us being aware of what we say and how we treat our kids as key to how they develop, and particularly how they develop skills of resilience, problem solving, coping. So we need to start with this question of like, what is important to you as a parent? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. What is important to you? Are your child's grades important? Is mastering and having advanced performance, advanced levels important to you? Is taking a risk important? Having your child persevere, cope with adversity, be independent, and again, of course, success or happiness. There's a reason I'm asking you this, because what we want would hopefully align with how we intentionally parent to achieve that goal. And in reality, a lot of us grow up as kids who were parented and generally parent in a way that is like our parents, is different than our parents, or is a little bit like it and a little bit not. The question is, can we be intentional about it and act in a way which is consistent with our goal for our kids? Be intentional. And so, as I said, love is foundational. We need to have this love for our kids, this love and connection. But love is not enough. We like to think that love is enough, that if I love my child, then everything's going to be okay. Unfortunately, parents who love their kids hurt their kids, abuse their kids, neglect their kids, overparent their kids, all because of love. And so we need to have more than love. We need to have an awareness about what we want, where we came from, and where we're going. We need to be aware of all of the energy and emotion that we bring into the room, that we bring into the relationship with our kids, right? Are we showing love? Are we acting with love? Are we acting with anger? Are we angry at our kids? Are we just angry in the world? Are we bringing anger into the world? Are we sad or depressed? And are we anxious or are we fearful? Now, all of these are human emotions. They're natural human emotions. We need to be aware of what our emotions are on the macro level, and at the micro level, what we bring into the relationship and what we bring into the home, because this awareness is key to you knowing where you came from, knowing what your child is about, and again, being purposeful. Because the idea of parent footprint, which you heard, or you might have heard. So parent footprint is a concept that I talk a lot about. We have a parent training and also a parent footprint podcast. The idea of a parent footprint is that we always leave footprints on our kids. The goal is to be intentional about the footprint that we're leaving on our kids. And the way to do that is through awareness, because no matter how we were raised, where we came from, we can grow, we can be intentional, we can understand our parenting beliefs, and then we can be intentional about how we are raising our kids. So what we know is that life is hard. Even before a pandemic, life is hard. There's challenges, there's struggles. We know life is stressful, and we know there will always be adversity, micro and macro, beyond our pandemic. So when you think about what's important to you, I argue that a critical focus for us with our gifted kids, twice exceptional kids, is how to cope, how to problem solve, and how ultimately to be resilient. We're not concerned about their brain power. What we're concerned about is how they deal with life when life comes, how they persevere in the face of adversity, how they have frustration tolerance, and how they use that great thinking brain that they have that solves problems in the classroom and then debates with you to solve problems in life. So when we think of resilience, it is the idea of rising above difficult circumstances, recovering from a setback, and bouncing back. The thing about resilient people, and we're going to talk about cultivating resilience, is they see these challenges as opportunities. How am I going to get around this? We've seen lots of resilient people in business, entrepreneurs, who have made a career and a profession during a pandemic by coming up with novel solutions to help people in this time. They seek solutions and they become more successful because they learn to push through their limits and realize I can figure this out when something comes thrown at me that I didn't expect. What's important is for us to think about when resiliency reaches its limits, and think about this. Resiliency reaches its limits when the external demands exceed one's internal resources. The external demands exceed a child's internal resources. And when that happens, we start to see physical symptoms like stomach aches and headaches. There's fatigue, there's lack of interest where there was interest, grades might drop, and then there's all the emotions of sadness and anger and irritability. With our older kids, we start to see some substance use and abuse, and then self-harm, which we do not want to see at all, which is a maladaptive coping mechanism for sure. A lot of our gifted kids are perfectionistic or have perfectionistic tendencies, and this gets in the way of resilience as well. So we want to be chipping away at perfectionism. There are many of you out there who I would venture a guess have perfectionistic tendencies. I always raise my hand and say I'm the first one to say I am a perfectionist in recovery. And I think it's important for us to own it as parents so we can teach our kids about it, that it runs in families. It tends to run with the profile of bright and gifted individuals. The problem with perfectionism is it creates constriction. It's based on fear of failing. It's based on never enough. And it brings us down. It doesn't open up our possibilities. We don't think outside the box. We're not being creative. There's a lot of self-loathing. We're not satisfied. We can't really get coached or teacher feedback because it feels personal and punitive and that you're a failure. And then ultimately what happens is that fear of failure exceeds the opportunity or experience of even having joy. And so we really I always recommend that when you see perfectionistic tendencies in a child, that to talk to them about perfectionism as a thing, as that's something that we can look at and talk about where are ways that the perfectionism gets them and gets in the way. So I want to talk to you about the 7 C's of resilience. And this was created by Dr. Kenneth Ginsberg, who is an international resilience expert, pediatrician on the East Coast. He believes that each C builds on the next. However, you can also work on each C individually. So we're going to start with competence. And now think about your child. Competence is, I can do something. I can put on my clothes. I can go to the bathroom by myself. I can feed myself. I can write. All of these things build competence. And so we want our kids to learn skills. We want a scaffold so they continue to learn skills, because when they become competent in skills, they gain confidence. They gain confidence in their abilities. I can do this. I have this ability. I know how to ride a bike now. I know how to climb on that tree. I know how to read. I know how to do a PowerPoint. What we want to do is we want to give our kids competence so they become more confident. And then we need to think about connection. What we know about resilient people feel connected to their families, their communities, their churches, their synagogues, their sports teams, their theater teams, and most importantly, their school. Because kids who are connected to their school feel safe, they develop a love of learning, and they develop a love of lifelong learning, that they are part of something bigger. So connection is huge. During a pandemic, we've had challenges with connection and so much disconnection. Then there's character. Instilling in our kids, we know that gifted kids are highly socially conscious, have high social morality. We want to really capitalize on helping them really get to know what they care about, what they are about, because when we're in times when resilience is reaching its limits, we can fall back on what we believe, what we care about, what our character is. Contribution, very much connected to connection, is about contributing to your home, your community, your church, your synagogue, your school. Because when we contribute, when our kids contribute, they feel that they matter. They also know that others can help them when they have a time of need. And what happens with a lot of gifted individuals, especially the achievers, the perfectionists, feel they have to do everything on their own because asking for any help is a sign of weakness. We want these kids to not only contribute, but to know that others can contribute to them. And as you've heard me talk about coping, kids who can cope, who have problem-solving abilities, have a way of saying, okay, there's a problem and I need to go about solving it, are more resilient, which leads to control, having an internal locus of control versus an external locus. An external locus of control, which lacks resiliency, is there's nothing I can do about the situation. I have no say in my life. An internal locus control is I have control over some things and I'm going to problem solve on those things. The 4 S's. We've gone for the 7 C's to the 4 S's. Great book, recommended to all of you, Doctors Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson, The Power of Showing Up. Tina has been on 3 of the Parent Footprint podcasts. The last one, she talked about this book in connection with another new book of hers. This is so key. When we're feeling overwhelmed, I just want you to remember how important it is for you to show up. The 4 S's are, our kids need to feel safe, right? This relates to love. They need to feel physically safe. They need to feel emotionally safe. After they feel safe, they need to be able to feel soothed. When they're upset, they need us to help them get less upset, regulate. A lot of our gifted kids get really emotional and really reactive. Our job is not to tell them what they did wrong or what to do differently in those moments. Our job is to help soothe them. The other 3rd S is they need to be seen for who they are. All of their wonder, all of their quirks, every aspect of them, they need to be seen and heard and accepted. And what the research shows is when kids are safe, they are soothed, they feel seen, they feel secure. They're securely attached to themselves, they're securely attached to others, which creates resilience and healthy relationships. Then there's the idea, resilience, a modern version of that is grit. Angela Lee Duckworth had I believe it was 2017 now, her TED Talk blew up and we're still talking about it. The idea of grit, her research showing that kids who worked hard had better outcomes and were more successful than her students that were smart but didn't work hard. It's all about this idea of how do we help our kids develop this work ethic? So one thing is having them in schools and programs where they are challenged. That helps. A lot of times gifted kids are languishing in classrooms which are not challenging. They don't have the opportunity to learn grit because they don't have to persevere. They just have to show up. That's why this acceleration and differentiation in your gifted clusters and your gifted classrooms and your gifted activities and groups are so key. So we want our kids to develop this commitment to practicing and getting better. And people who learn to overcome adversity have this resilience, and then it becomes part of who they are, this grit. I know many of you have heard about Carol Dweck's concept of mindset, Carol Dweck out of Stanford. And basically, we think about two types of mindsets. There's the fixed mindset, which is my brain, I'm born as smart as I'm ever going to be. And being smart, maintaining smartness is doing well, the best, without any effort. The growth-oriented mindset is my brain's a muscle, and the more I use it and the harder I work, the more I learn and the more I grow. Carol Dweck at one point wrote an article and was talking about changing the name of the fixed mindset to the gifted mindset, which was really a wake-up call to many of us in the field about how the idea that how many of these gifted kids have to hold on to being smart by just showing up and impressing people, and their intense fear of not being smart by actually not doing well because they were challenged. And when that happens, you don't do anything new, you don't take on, you don't try any, no risks, and you always need to show that you're the smart one. The growth-oriented mindset, it's like, bring it on. Yeah, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. I've never done that before. A seminal research study by Dr. Dweck was she took engineering students, she gave them questionnaires, sorted them into, based on their responses, the fixed group and the growth group, gave them all an engineering test that they were going to fail for sure. It was well beyond their knowledge level. And then after they failed, they were asked if they wanted to see the test of someone who did worse than them or better than them. And as you can imagine, the fixed mindset folks said, I want to see someone who did worse than me because they wanted to just feel better. And the growth folks wanted to see who did better because they wanted to learn. So mindset, our child's mindset is the difference between wanting to look smart versus learning, the difference between just my natural ability versus my effort and my power of effort, and the difference between resilience when there's obstacles, like, yeah, I want to figure this out, versus discouragement, melting down, fetal position. And we just have to be aware of the messages that we tell our kids. When I was learning about this way back when, and I remember with one of my perfectionists was, we had a ski day, and she had already learned how to ski and was proficient enough at skiing. And I remember knowing that she was perfectionistic. She said, "Hey, Dad, I didn't fall all day." And my old response would be, "Oh, honey, that's great." But thinking about this lens, I said, "Well, I wonder, did you challenge yourself at all?" She kind of looked at me funny. Like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm not saying it's like I want you to fall, but usually after you've learned to ski, sometimes we fall if we're pushing ourselves a little bit." And I'm not one of these pushy sports parents. I'm just using that example as we have to be mindful when the 100% comes home in math and we say, "Oh man, another 100, that's great." Are we asking, was it hard? Did you try? Do you already know this stuff? Being mindful, being aware. So when we're thinking about building a growth mindset, we are focusing on effort. We're focusing on persistence. We're focusing on the process. We're focusing on those intentionally instead of just the outcome, the trophy, the grade, how great they are at it, getting to the finish line. And we're focusing on how are they problem solving? Are they engaged or just trying to get through something? And ultimately, this is about building resilience. So I want you to think of these images as the trees up top and the forest down below. Okay, the trees are the forest, because when we're in parenting situations, we are most always in the trees. Get your shoes on and get ready for school. I need you to start your homework so you can take your bath and get ready for bed. You need to get your homework done right now because we got to get out to soccer practice. Those are the trees. Those are all important. The forest is the big picture. When we're parenting, if we're parenting resilience, sometimes we need to make a conscious choice to step back and focus on the forest, which is your child is melting down because math is too hard. And what too hard might be really too hard, or it might just be it takes them actually a little bit that they're not used to. Instead of helping them get through it, you might be rubbing their back and saying, you know what, we're just going to focus on taking a breath and getting through this next problem, whether you understand it or not. Our goal right now is not to do the homework correctly. Our goal is to practice being able to breathe through difficult situations when we're upset. Another forest, for those of you who have those wonderful battles of getting out the door when you're going to school regularly, we're going to school regularly, are going to go to school regularly. And those battles would have a lot of screaming and yelling and stress. Sometimes you do need to get out the door regardless, because you have to get to a meeting, or there's something you think your child needs to be on time. But there's also, you might want to cultivate the relationship, and you might want to let the school deal with the consequences of a child who's continually late. Right? You might decide you don't want that kind of relationship in the morning or at bedtime, because you let some things go, a bath go, a homework go, because you want the relationship, the forest, instead of the tree. Again, this is all about being mindful and aware. Just a quick comment on technology. Technology, of course, has been a huge part of sustaining us and connecting us and teaching our kids. We also need to know that too much technology keeps kids preoccupied, more distractible, impacts sleep. They can be irritable with sort of this detox, with withdrawal and the reactivity, and also can create anxiety and depression, particularly with social media. As kids get older, yes, we have to have our limits. I'm also a huge proponent of trying to help them understand when they start to feel different. When is too much for them? When do they notice it in their body? So they don't have to be in opposition to us. I'm fine. I need to do this. Like, we want to try to get away from the conflict and be like, yeah, I get that. I'm just asking you, for you, when do you find, like, do your eyes get blurry? Do you feel a little irritable? And then you say, like, for me, I know it's this, and this. You want to start creating this conversation resilience, because they're probably going to go away to a dorm room or live on their own. You're not going to be there to monitor it. And we have to incrementally educate them. Also educate them about sleep. This is from a podcast with Dr. Valerie Crabtree that I did. She's a sleep expert with St. Jude's, and great research. She has great approaches, talks about how she handles it with her kids. And look at, the different hours that our kids need, and they need this, and they don't think they need this. And many of us didn't know that we needed it. And as we get older, we realize we really need it. So it's how to help them understand that to cope well and to be well, they need sleep. And then especially with the older kids who have a lot of activities and are really into their schooling and in advanced classes as they get older, we want to help them back out how they can do sleep and do what they want to do without making sleep be the thing that's sacrificed first. All right, so now we're moving into 10 steps for cultivating resilience. As you see, it's in yourself and for your child. This is a twofer because we are all human beings, right? We all benefit from this. And I should also say a key premise with this parent footprint, with a footprint, being aware of the footprint that we are putting on our kids, placing on our kids, is that our kids, one of the best things we can do for our kids is for us to actually focus on ourselves and our own health and our own well-being, right? We often think all of our attention needs to go to our kids. That's usually at the expense of an adult and a primary caretaker, sacrificing themselves. And I'll say often, but not always, a mom, a very engaged mom, and you matter. And your well-being matters, and your kids are watching. And so we want them to model you. So the first thing is, you've heard this a few times, self-awareness. Number one, we need to be able to check in with ourselves. We need to help our kids learn this metacognition, checking in with themselves, to ask themselves, how are they feeling? Are you doing okay? Are you struggling? Do you need help, right? We want to show that help is healthy. To ask for help. Can we manage it on our own? Do we just need to make an adjustment, or do we need to reach out? So again, that awareness is not doing anything different except just being aware of, how do I feel? What energy am I bringing into my room? Am I okay, or am I not doing okay for whatever reason? Then we get to self-regulation. Like once we're aware, if we feel we need to regulate more, if we're high emotions, if our kids are having high emotions, this is actually where the metacognition comes in, thinking about your thinking, right? Gifted kids are great thinkers. Some are actually great at thinking about their thinking. Other kids with the asynchrony, gifted kids, they have not yet developed that introspection yet. We want to continually try to grow that, try to stretch that. We want to teach them this is a primarily cognitive intervention, what we do in cognitive behavioral therapy. It's also what we do when we're being resilient. We're problem solving. How am I thinking? Is this thought true? Right? Am I really going to fail this test? Is everyone really going to hate me because I said that? How can I challenge my thinking and alter it a little bit? Well, this is going to be kind of hard, but I can get through it. I've gotten through other things before. This sounds so simple, but so many people of all ages do not think about their thinking, challenge their thinking, or modify their thinking. And then also there's just breathing, right? Breathing is huge. Just 30 seconds, 1 minute, big belly breathing to get oxygen into our lungs and into our brain. In the midst of a pandemic, in a different crisis, a mini crisis, a micro crisis, not even a macro crisis, we need to gather information, right? Gifted kids are great at gathering information. They're so resourceful. What is the factual information about the situation we are dealing with? And then we need to manage the amount of information that we are consuming, particularly if it has to do with a pandemic or politics or anything else that's stressful. Shootings that are going on right now, well, that continue to go on, right? All of this real stuff, we have to figure what is the right amount of information, because that helps with regulation. That helps. I'm being aware. Can I consume this? No. This is too much for me. Okay, I need to regulate. I can't regulate if I'm watching all of this stuff. Okay, there's a way to stay apprised of current events and all situations without being inundated, and we need to know that our kids are listening to what we're listening to and watching what we're watching. Key to resilience is acceptance of the situation that we have at hand. Key is acceptance of the situation. This is a key to mindfulness-based practice, right? This is the Dalai Lama talks about how almost all human suffering can be deduced to either wanting things to be different than they are, or wanting things to change or not want to change. So wanting things to be different than they are, which can't happen because things are how they are, and wanting things to stay exactly the same and not change, which is impossible because things are always changing. The key is to help our kids and ourselves accept the situation, breathe into the situation. The Dalai Lama says we can be okay even when our life situation is not okay. Imagine that. Think about that. We can be okay if our life situation is not okay. People who only feel good when things are going well and feel bad when things are not going well have a complete external locus of control, as opposed to, as we talked about with the 7 C's. They need to have that internal control of, I can deal with this. This is how things are. So I'm going to start problem solving. I'm going to accept it for how it is. And then I'm going to see how I'm going to make it as best as possible. Back to what's in your control, right? How do we separate, given our situation, micro or macro, difficult situation for our child? We want to develop resilience. Okay, let's look at this. What's going on? Okay, what can I control? Okay, so we have a pandemic there. It is spreading. This is scary. What can I do? Well, I can wear a mask. I can wash my hands. I can socially distance. And I can be outside. What can I control? How other people do any of those things. The rate of the transmission, the rate of the vaccinations. Once we can separate, then we focus on the things we can do and we let go of the parts that are causing us stress, anxiety, and worry, but we let go of them because we have no control over them. And again, you're hearing problem solving. Our gifted kids have these amazing frontal lobes with all of these neural networks. They are always coming up with amazing ideas, problem solving, Rube Goldberg, engineering, Legos, robotics, creative stories, theater. That same brain, that exact same brain and those abilities, we need to draw the bridge to problem solving a life situation, right? What is working? What is not working? And with a changing situation like COVID or another situation, what new opportunities exist? Remember, a resilient person sees the new opportunities. And then, as I alluded to earlier, speaking to all of you folks, and also for us to cultivate and educate in our children, self-care. How important emotional, physical, and spiritual health is. So critical. Like, this is what we should be focusing on in ourselves and our kids, right? They have great brains. They can go do great things. They need to be healthy. They need to be resilient. They need to be able to bounce back within reason. So when we're in this different new normal, this pandemic life and beyond, we have to continue to do what fills us up: exercise, read, meditate, run, all the things, talk to friends, have your book group, whatever it is, have it, do it. You're modeling it. Some of it you might want to do with your kids. Some of it you need to do on your own because you need some of your alone time. And of course, counseling, right? Counseling is a good thing. We also want to teach our kids that counseling is there not just because we're struggling. It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's a resource that we reach out to when we want to work on ourselves or want a trusted person to talk things through. And then, of course, we talked about the disconnection of the pandemic. Staying connected is key. And again, screens, we have this paradoxical relationship with screens and technology today because we need them and they've sustained us in multiple ways. And we can also have too much of them, but staying connected is key. Because if you remember on the connection aspect of the 7 C's, like, we need to know that we're a part of something, we matter, we can contribute, and other people can then help us. The presence, right? Focus on staying present. All, as the Dalai Lama says, all those who live in the past tend to be depressed because the past has already happened. There's nothing you can do about it. Those who live in the future tend to be anxious because the future hasn't happened yet. There's nothing you can do about it. We need to keep focusing on the present moment, what's happening now. And when we're focused on the present moment is often actually fine because all of the worry and fear is in the future, all the what ifs. All the what if thinking, you know, that's when I talk about the worry monster places his fictional thoughts in our head. They usually start with what if. What if the pandemic never ends? What if I don't get picked for the gold team? What if I don't get the part? What if I don't get invited to the party? What if you don't pick me up? These are all what ifs. None of those have happened yet. Hey, let's just focus on right now. We'll deal with that stuff if it happens. And a lot of times it doesn't even happen. So whenever we get pulled out, we need to come back in to the present moment and help our kids come back to the present moment. Gratitude is something I think all of us have had a sharp, a heavy dose of during the pandemic. I remember about 3 months in or so, I was out for a run. You know, we'd all been holed up for 3 months. And somehow this bakery that we go to, it opened up, and my wife said, hey, would you like to get some of that avocado? You'd like me to bring you some of that avocado toast? I'm going out. I couldn't believe how excited I was for avocado toast, something I took for granted. And it's like all of these little things we need to bring into our lives without the pandemic, on regular life, and help our kids learn to focus on what they have, what they're grateful for. The research on gratitude is it improves wellness, it improves mood, and it improves health and wellness, period. Let's model that for our kids. All too often, we are all focused on what we don't have. And the pandemic has really helped us understand those things, as well as grateful for what we do have. So when we're thinking about how to help our kids be resilient, we want to help them develop strategies to address the problems that come. Like, hey, when you have a problem, let's use your great thinking brain. I'm here to help. Let's figure out how to solve it. And then we want to help them with these tools of, okay, what am I thinking? Is my thinking true? How can I change my thinking? What can I control? What can't I control? All right. Okay. Based on that, what am I going to focus on? What action am I going to take that's in my control? We need to model. They're always watching, as I mentioned, that we need to model for them how to handle stress the best we can. When we don't handle it well, which is going to happen, particularly during a pandemic, but in regular life, come back and own it. You know what? I didn't handle that well. I'm sorry I raised my voice. I'm sorry I got intense. I think I know how I got triggered, but I apologize. That was just over the top. And you know what I'm going to do? I really think I just need to go for a walk, or I'm realizing I'm not exercising enough. Right? Be human. Model that for them. And then really letting them know they matter. I can't stress that enough. Knowing they are seen and that they matter. So when we think of an overall stress reduction plan, or otherwise known as a resiliency plan, we want to help our kids identify and address a problem. We want to help them understand what are the stressors in their life. And again, what can they let go of, especially the older kids that start to take on all the advanced classes, are on high performance activities. They don't need to do all of them. They can let some things go, and they might need some help. We want to help them manage their screens and their social media, educate them. We want to highlight exercising, eating well, sleeping well, and then having their emotional release outlet. Is it running? Is it punching a heavy bag in the garage? Is it reading? Is it journaling? Is it talking to their friends? Like whatever it is, to have their things, Legos, name it. Some important things for us parents to consider. Sometimes the best thing to do is get out of our kids' way. Remember, we're conditioned to want to help them avoid pain and suffering and not have a difficult circumstance. Sometimes we just need to get out of their way so they can deal with it and have a learning opportunity to deal with it. It's key to listen to our kids. This is how they're seen. Oh, tell me more. Oh, wow. We want to keep the conversation going, not stop it with questions, especially with our teenagers. We can stop it in a minute if we just ask one too many questions or the wrong question. And remember that nothing is as important as our kids seeing what we do every day. So when we're parenting with awareness and intention to bring this home, you're being aware of your emotional reaction and you're managing it. You're asking yourself, okay, what's my parenting goal? What am I trying to achieve here? Is this a forest situation or a tree situation? Am I looking to complete this task, or I want a larger relationship thing to happen here, or a frustration tolerance support to happen here, to work on that? And then based on that, and I know this is hard to do in the moment, but this is about trying to be mindful, is what are all the different ways I can reach my goal of increasing frustration tolerance, or getting them to take more risks, right? Or having them just enjoy themselves instead of being so stressed out and performance driven. And then respond in a way that you are attempting to achieve one of those goals. And then after, you assess it. Like, did it work? Sometimes things like they fail so miserably. And then for me, I know that a lot of times when I'm having a failure, I went into the situation emotionally charged. Even when it was up front, I wasn't emotionally charged. Inside, I was feeling tense and I was upset, and my kids are sensitive and they know it and they react to my feeling. Other times, like, wow, that worked well. Okay, what worked well? How do we bottle this up and use it next time? This is that awareness and intention. So remember, when we act in resilient ways, we're modeling it for our kids and we're teaching it to our kids by our behavior, right? They need to see us handle the circumstances rationally. We need to do our best to manage our own anxieties, our own worries, our own stress, and get help and support if the external circumstances are exceeding our internal resources. We do not have to have all the answers with gifted kids. They ask questions that we do not know the answers to. And we know that a lot of our kids know more about certain things than we do. That is fine. We are there for a guide. We need to show up. We need to be present, right? We need to remember that we are trying to teach them that resilient people turn these obstacles into opportunities and use that language. We need to accept our current situation, right? Find solutions for our current life, our current restrictions, which have been slowly easing up, and then model gratitude while we're trying to embrace uncertainty, embrace it, which I know is scary. So looping back, what do you want for your children? How are you going to get there? You're going to parent with purpose and intention. Do your best to do so with kindness and humility. And ultimately, do your best to be the person that you want your child to become. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peters. That was amazing. As a parent of two teenagers, I can tell you that was very valuable information that I look forward to getting a chance and putting into some type of semblance in my family if I can. I don't see any questions in the chat. I did post that we did have to leave at 7, but we do have a minute or two. If anyone would like to post a question, we can probably get 1 or 2 questions to Dr. Peters. I did put our upcoming other gifted presentations and other United Parent Council scheduled events that may be of interest to some of the parents. I recommend you copy and paste that section in the chat. And I also did put the link for those of you that want to jump over directly to the board meeting. It is being broadcast on the district YouTube channel. And so I did put that link in there so you can find it easily. Does anyone have any questions they would like to pose to Dr. Peters? And thank you all. We had 20 people. All of you stayed for the entire thing, unless they've all disappeared behind their cameras. But everybody stayed on here, and you had another dozen people to 2 dozen actually on Facebook that were coming on and watching. So, oh, we've got a question here. How do you deal with children who are very introverted and don't share their feelings?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you used the word introverted, because that is a thing, and it's not a pathological thing. A lot of gifted kids are gifted people are very introverted. And what you're trying to do is model talking about feelings and giving opportunity, but you can't pull it out of them. And you don't, and even if you have an introvert who will stay in a room with you, but once you start asking questions or asking them to get in touch with how they're feeling and talk to you, and then they leave the room, like that's, you push too far. So often, developmentally, they can grow with different relationships in learning how to share their feelings, but a lot of these kids aren't in touch with them at different developmental ages. And so it's really about modeling it and being very patient with it, and knowing and not worrying that just because a person doesn't express their feelings wholeheartedly and in touch with them and is more introverted, that's a bad thing. We just want to keep trying for incremental growth.
Great. We do have 2 other questions. I'll ask one and then try to get the last one in. Where is the balance between homework level of being way too much and stressful versus completing the work persistence at the elementary grade level?
That's a great question. And for the actual time, I'm going to ask you to loop back to your teachers and your elementary school, because the way we look at that is, how long is it meant to take? Right. And so we really want the kids to work hard for that time period. If you have a perfectionistic kid, if you have a kid with an undiagnosed or diagnosed learning issue, homework or processing issue, attentional issue can take a really long time. And we need to help those kids with not having as much of it or reducing it. So to me, the answer is, what is it supposed to be? And is your kid meeting that level, or is it taking twice beyond that? And then I would say we don't want it to take twice beyond that, and look at why and what we can do about it.
And I think that's fantastic to remind parents to go back to their teachers. Your first recourse is always to talk to your child's teacher. Obviously, Dr. Briez has an amazing staff over at the district, but everything does start where your student is in a classroom and interacting with a teacher. We have one more question. I know it just turned 7 o'clock, but I'd like to throw this out here. See if you can give a slightly short answer. It says, do you have any tips on determining when to encourage a child to keep working versus when to see the forest and work on other strategies?
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, it's they keep persevering because they need to get it done. And sometimes we need to be like, you know what, I did my best and walk away. I think that's the right conversation to have, because with the perfectionistic achiever, they're not going to feel good until it's done. And I think the questions to start to cultivate with them is, when is enough enough? Does one always have to complete a task and at a high level, or is there a time when one can just walk away? And I know I got to be brief here. This sometimes is a good, needs to be a conversation with the child and the teacher, because the child will not walk away, these types of kids, unless the teacher gives permission, because they want to perform and to please.
Understood. And again, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I understood you had an opportunity to meet with our kids' teachers, which is so wonderful to have them be able to listen to you directly. So thank you again. Dr. Briez, is there anything you'd like to add at the very end here? You're all good. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end this recording. Folks, it will be posted back up onto our Facebook. If you wanted to go back and look at any of those slides, it will be available later. Okay. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.